I'm Richard Piet. Welcome back to the BC City Connection podcast. Of course, the BC City Connection podcast is something you may have connected with already, perhaps on the city's website as an audio episode, or maybe on the YouTube channel for the City of Battle Creek, or maybe you're watching on Access Vision. We invite you to continue to do so. And on that YouTube platform, you can follow us, subscribe to the audio podcast. We appreciate that very much. So, one thing to point out is we actually are busy with these episodes, and they deploy over the course of a month. But we've also assigned some special episodes that talk about housing, so watch out for those. Today on the BC City Connection, we are talking about the Community Oversight Board in Battle Creek. Joining us today, Carey Whitfield, who is the chair of the Community Oversight Board, COB, and Clare Tanner, the vice chair. And we welcome you both. Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Let's talk, Carey, first of all, about what the COB is meant to do. Tell us about that.
Well, I thank you, Richard, and I truly appreciate your taking the time out to identify the COB, or the Community Oversight Board, as a functional element within the city of Battle Creek. As we refer to the COB, I'd like to think of it as an advisory board to the city manager, where we advise her of decisions that has been made by the police department through a community relations complaint, as I will refer to probably later as a CRC. Now, the board basically take information that has been received from the police chief that he believes is something that is not considered to be sustained as a complaint by a citizen. We review that complaint. If we agree with the police chief, then there is no further reason for us to continue any additional investigation. However, if we believe that there is more substance to it than what the chief of police has established, then we will probably go to the city manager and suggest to her that she may want to investigate this particular complaint. That's part of our duties and responsibilities. But in addition to that, we have other duties and responsibilities. We also have to try and build a better relationship between the police department and our community. Throughout the course of the years, many problems has existed, and those problems has created a lot of friction with our community. And so our process is to take away that friction and build a better relationship. That's pretty much it for what we're supposed to do. There are a whole bunch of things that we're going to be doing behind the scenes, but principally our goal is to evaluate a complaint and advise to the city manager our concerns regarding that complaint, and secondly, build a relationship with our community.
You've talked a little bit about the roles, but maybe there's more to add there. And the limitations. Are there limitations of the COB?
Yes, there are limitations. We are not allowed to determine the discipline of any officers. We are not allowed to conduct our own investigation. We do not interview any witnesses, nor do we interview any of the police officers. We are there to listen to the complaint and advise as to what our concerns are regarding that complaint. We cannot review the case if the police department has already sustained the case.
How can, Clare, community members file complaints about police misconduct?
Yeah, the main way is to go to the city's website, and the address is pretty simple. But basically, if you just go to Google and say City of Battle Creek police complaint, the website will pop right up. And then, about halfway down on that page, there's a link that says link to download a complaint form. I will say that, one of our roles is to help anyone who might need support in that process. And I'm sure later we'll talk about who all is on the community oversight board, but we were chosen specifically because we all have roles that make us more available to various populations within the city of Battle Creek, and so we can provide support. In our speaking with the police department as well, I do believe that they're pretty open. Like, even if you just went down to the police department and said you wanted to file a complaint, like I do think that they are trying to make it an accessible process.
We'll certainly put the link to that, by the way, in the notes for this episode too. So as folks look in that information connected to this episode, the link will be there and you can click right through. What happens after a complaint is filed, and what options are available if someone disagrees with the outcome?
So the Office of Professional Standards within the police department conducts an internal investigation, and they will, of course, speak with the person who's filing the complaint. It's really important for the person to bring as much of the evidence as they have available into that process. So they will also interview witnesses. They'll interview, of course, the police officer involved. And they'll review all the body cams and any private videos that people bring forward. And the reason I say it's important to bring that evidence forward is because, as Carey mentioned, we don't have the power on the oversight board to reinvestigate or see if there's any evidence that was missed. So it needs to come forward the first time around. And then I think the second part of your question was what to do if you disagree. People who file a complaint at the end of the process, they get a letter from the officer who conducted the investigation at the Office of Professional Standards. And it will say there might be multiple counts to a complaint, there was a conduct or courtesy issue with the officer involved, but also maybe there was something more serious going on, or the police had overstepped and was outside of what they were supposed to be doing. And so the letter that you get will have a judgment on each of those elements of the complaint, and it will have information on what to do if you disagree with the result of any one of those pieces. And basically, you can file, there's a place online, it'll have a link. You can go down to the city manager's office that will help. And it can be filed by email or even by phone. So again, very accessible, trying to make it a very accessible process. And you could approach any one of us, and we can't provide any advice or really talk to you about the substance at that point until your appeal is filed. But we could certainly point you to the website. I work with a lot of folks who might not be literate. And so I can have someone here in our office, type in your form if that's what you need.
Yeah, makes sense. So you talked about a number of folks being on the board. Who are they?
So as part of the original city commission ordinance, that they wanted to make sure that people from, I'd say, vulnerable or from populations that have a higher rate of negative interactions with police were represented. So there's representation from the NAACP, who is Carey. There's representation from Voces, Jose Orozco. There's representation from the Burma Center, Dominic Wu. And then I am from the ARC of Calhoun County, and we support people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Additionally, there is a cross-representation of other folks, just citizens on the committee. 2 people who work in education, which is really important for our role in reaching out to youth. That would be Jennifer Williams and Brandon Phoenix. Cassiana Champlin, a realtor in town, is on the committee. And boy, the danger of this is forgetting somebody. We are going to be working on our communications plan and getting all of our information out there into the community so people know who we are and how to find us.
Yeah,
Oh,
Carey.
Mark Stevens. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, go
Mark,
ahead.
I'm sorry. Mark Stevens, also a citizen of Battle Creek, is on the committee.
Okay. Carey, I presume that it was particularly important to do as Clare has described, make sure that these audiences were well represented. Isn't that true?
Yes, it is. And I think just to add to what Claire said, I believe Brandon Phoenix is on the board, and I'm not sure if you mentioned that, Claire, or at least I didn't hear it. But yes, the original intent was to have these organizations included on a board because that is a community, or those are communities which are, as mentioned, most likely to have negative interactions. And as a result of that, I believe it's going to make a major difference because once something has been done, it's very difficult for a person to establish trust. And for many years, there has been concerns with our community, particularly for the minority communities, that they were treated differently than other communities. And so as a result, we had to reestablish what we thought, particularly with this board, how to convey a message to the minority community that actually what is going to happen is that all people within our community or our entire citizenry will be treated the same. And that's part of the creation of this board. It is to foster transparency within the police department and its community. And we do that through strengthening the relationships with the community in the police department.
Well, we certainly know that this has been a long and careful process, and it's taken some time to arrive at the board and understand what its charge will be. When does the board start its duties?
Well, effective immediately.
As soon as somebody files a complaint.
This
Okay, so
we do.
the first complaint gets the ball rolling.
Well, the first appeal, rather. Sorry,
Yeah.
Carey.
And I was just going to mention that much of what we do is with our complaints, but there are other things that we do which has nothing to do with the complaint. We have to again create an environment where people feel comfortable. And so we're working in the background to identify those issues between the police department and the community. And so that has already started. We probably have had an earlier start, but effective this month, we're going to begin the process of getting people to know what the Community Oversight Board is, and hopefully getting them to utilize the complaint process throughout the police department so that their concerns again will be identified and hopefully resolved in a manner that all parties are satisfied.
Yeah, and so I think the main point of that, one of them anyway, is you're ready. It's assembled. The process is ready to be exercised when folks are ready to do so. Are there other expectations that exist for the COB?
Yeah. Carrie was just alluding to our role interfacing with the public, and so we do have a role in terms of providing education. We have a role in offering up policy recommendations to the city manager. So especially as we are eyes and ears. We're meant to be the eyes and ears of the public in this whole process. And if we recognize that there are some systematic things that need to be addressed, it is our role to bring those up and to work collaboratively on how they might be addressed. So we mean to be out at many of the major festivals in town this summer with our information booth. We really encourage folks to come up, talk to us, tell us what's important to them so that we can make sure that we are making those our top priority, and also finding a way to communicate that feedback back to the city and the police department.
Anything you'd like to add to that, Carey?
Again, I can only reemphasize that what we would like to do is to minimize the tension and encourage positive outcomes throughout enhancing the community relationships with the police department. We are firm believers that the police department does a great job, but because there's so little transparency in what they do, we need to make sure that, as Claire mentioned earlier, that we educate the community on what they do and how they do it, so that they recognize what the police department is doing. It is important that there is trust. And unfortunately, throughout the course of the years, much of that trust has fallen. We need to reestablish that trust. And that's part of our essential goal. Establishing trust in relationships.
All right. Well, we appreciate the opportunity to chat with you both. And again, if folks have questions, simply click through to the website as part of the City of Battle Creek site and get more information. Carey Whitfield and Clare Tanner, Chair and Vice Chair, respectively, of the Battle Creek Community Oversight Board here on the BC City Connection.